I never expected that asking for help would spiral into something that would turn my world upside down. But when you're caught between desperation and hope, you don't always think things through. You act on instinct. My name is Emma Taylor, and this is the story of how I asked 3 very different people for help and ended up rewriting the course of my life. It started on a cold Tuesday morning. I was sitting in my small apartment in Austin, staring at an eviction notice. My job at the community center had been cut due to budget reductions. Rent was overdue, and utilities were threatening to be shut off. I had no savings, no family nearby, and my pride was the only thing that kept me from crying in front of strangers. I wasn't ready to give up, but I also wasn't sure how much longer I could hold it together. I had 3 people in my life who I could possibly ask for help. None of them knew each other well, and none of them were people I had leaned on before. But that morning, I swallowed my pride and reached out. One by one. First, there was Jason Reed. We had dated in college, and though we didn't work out romantically, we remained distant friends. He was now a lawyer, well-established and smart, with a cool composure that sometimes made me feel like I had no right to ask for anything. Still, I texted him, "Hey, Jason. I need some advice. Can we talk?" Next was Amber Collins. She had been my best friend since high school. Our lives had diverged after she married young and moved out to the suburbs. We didn't talk as much, but there was always love there. She was kind and thoughtful, a stay-at-home mom of 2, and probably the last person I wanted to stress out. But I messaged her anyway. "Amber, I'm kind of in a rough spot. Any chance we could chat?" And finally, there was Caleb Mason, my downstairs neighbor and the most unlikely person on my list. He was an artist, a bit of a recluse, and we had only had small talks in the elevator or while checking mail. He had a warmth in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a while. I wasn't even sure why I thought of him, but I did. I knocked on his door. "Hey, sorry to bother you. Could I talk to you for a minute?" To my surprise, all 3 of them responded almost immediately. Jason called within 10 minutes. He sounded surprised to hear from me but concerned when I explained my situation. "You should have said something earlier, Emma," he said, and offered to meet for lunch the next day to discuss legal options or assistance programs. Amber called me right after she put her kids down for a nap. Her voice cracked when I told her I might be evicted. "Emma, you've always been the strong one," she said. "I'll do whatever I can to help. You can come stay with us if you need to." And Caleb? He invited me in, poured me a cup of herbal tea, and just listened. He didn't judge. He didn't even ask too many questions. He just nodded and said, "Let me know what I can do." That night, I sat on my couch and cried, not because I was broken, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt less alone. I had asked 3 people for help, and all 3 had shown up. The next few days were a blur of conversations, planning, and unexpected bonding. Jason helped me draft a letter to the landlord, explaining the situation and requesting a short extension. He also connected me with a non-profit legal clinic that could assist with tenants' rights. Over coffee at a downtown cafe, he looked at me with that familiar gaze from years ago. "You've always been too independent for your own good," he said with a half smile. Amber, true to her word, came by with boxes and helped me pack just in case. We laughed over old photos and even found my high school journal, which we read aloud through tears and fits of laughter. She offered her guest room, a warm place with floral curtains and space for me to breathe. She cooked dinner that night and made sure I left with leftovers. Caleb surprised me the most. He invited me to help with his next mural project, saying he could use an extra pair of hands and would pay me from the small grant he'd received. "Art saves," he told me. "Not just the people who see it, but the ones who make it." We spent hours painting side by side on a community wall, sharing stories under the Texas sun. He had a way of making silence feel like a conversation. 1 week turned into 2. The landlord granted me an extension thanks to Jason's help. Amber insisted I spend weekends at her place to decompress. Caleb and I painted 5 more walls. I began to find pieces of myself again, Not just someone who needed help, but someone who was worthy of kindness. Then something happened that I didn't expect. One night, we were all together at Amber's house. She had invited Jason and Caleb over for dinner to thank them, and I hadn't objected. The evening started light: lasagna, red wine, and Caleb playing an old guitar he found in Amber's garage. But as the night wore on, it became clear something had shifted. Jason pulled me aside while the others were in the kitchen. "Emma," he said, his voice low, "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I know we didn't work out, but seeing you again, it's reminded me how much I care." I was stunned. Before I could respond, Caleb walked into the room. His smile faltered for just a second before he nodded politely and turned away. Later, when I walked him out, he paused on the porch and said, "I don't want to complicate anything, but I've grown to really like being around you." 2 confessions. One night. And my heart felt like it was being tugged in different directions. I stayed up late that night at Amber's, sitting on her patio, staring at the stars. She came out with a blanket and sat beside me. "Looks like life is trying to give you more than just help," she whispered. "It's giving you options." Over the next few days, I tried to focus on getting back on my feet. I found part-time work assisting at the mural program Caleb was part of. Jason continued to help me navigate rental options and even helped me apply for a housing subsidy. Amber became my daily source of encouragement. But the truth was, I had to confront what was happening inside me. My crisis had brought 3 people into sharp focus, each representing something different. Jason was my past, safe, dependable, and familiar. Caleb was unexpected, creative, and grounding. Amber was my anchor, a reminder of who I truly was. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the city skyline, I invited all 3 of them back to my apartment. Not for help this time, but to share something. They sat on the small couch and mismatched chairs, the people who had carried me when I couldn't carry myself. "I asked all 3 of you to help me," I began, "and what happened next changed everything." I thanked Jason for reminding me that I was worthy of being defended. I thanked Amber for never making me feel like a burden. And I thanked Caleb for showing me how healing can be quiet and colorful.